there, and then we should be ready to record. Give me 3, 2, 1. Cannot start. Perfect. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Giles and the Goalie podcast. I am your host, Giles Farrell. Over across the way of the internet is Ben Remington.
Hello.
And we are joined by a third guest on the show today. He is a contributing hockey writer at zonecoverage.com and also is host of the Locked On Wild podcast, which you can catch 3 times a week. That is Joe Booley.
Hi, how's it going?
We're quarantined. How are you?
If my kids could go back to school right now, I'd be happy.
I hear that's a common complaint.
Yeah, well, right before I came down to join the podcast, my kids got into a skirmish, and it was like, really? Really, this is what's happening right now. We're not even a weekend, we're not even one full day into distance learning, and it's pure chaos. So, they can go back to school anytime soon now.
I think we're going to see some real traction on increasing teacher salaries.
I gotta hope so.
I think that's going to be a real, socioeconomical fallout from this whole situation.
You know what I've seen? I saw a post by U.S. Bank. They said they were going to pay their bank tellers and their for being kind of essential during this time. Mm-hmm. I saw your retail employees, like your frontliners. A lot of your frontliners who are at the top of this or at the front of this are all getting, not all of them, but some businesses are deciding to increase their pay during this time, and it's like, it's like there's a light going on that businesses are realizing who makes the damn money.
Well, right, yeah, no, it's good to see in a lot of situations, especially especially for folks who are really dealing with the brunt of it. Retail folks, I worked at that biz for a long time. You're pretty much always underpaid. And then you look at, the healthcare field, good Lord, if those people aren't getting time and a half through this, who should? So.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. So, any other hot quarantine takes before we move to sports?
Not having sports sucks, but
oh yeah.
I will say that the various channels have done a pretty good job of making the best of it and finding good classic games to air. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm watching that Chiefs-Rams Monday Night Football game from last season or 2 seasons ago, I guess now.
Oh, that's
and my God, does that thing just get straight crazy after halftime? So I'm looking forward to that. Yesterday, I watched Game 163, Twins and Tigers on the network. That was fantastic. So, it's obviously silver lining, very thin silver lining to a very dark cloud. But I think it's good that the networks have realized, hey, let's just show some classic game, feed people some memorabilities. And, instead of cramming more, Skip Bayless down our throats or something.
Oh, God. Yeah, you talking about the channels on the radio last night. I ran out for pizza at one of the local pizzerias here down in Montgomery, and on my ride down there for the whole 20 minutes that it took, I listened to the replay of the Outback Bowl.
Nice.
And just that I forget how just methodical that final drive was to just clinch the game.
Yeah.
I mean, Auburn couldn't do anything against the Gophers, which is crazy when you look back at just kind of how great that season was, and it feels so long ago. But it was fun to listen to that back because Mike Graham does one hell of a job calling Gopher games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no kidding. That definitely feels like a lifetime ago, and it was only
right
2-ish months ago when they played Auburn.
4 2 days from now. So
yeah.
But yeah, it does feel like it's 40 years.
Yeah, it really does. Okay. So last week on the show, we went through all 18 goaltenders in Minnesota Wild history and ranked them accordingly. So Ben, since you are the list maker, what list do we have Joe on for this week?
Well, I figured Joe was a great one to talk a little classic Wild. So I threw together a list of the top 10 skaters in Wild history. Goalies, it was easy to do the top all because there was only 18 of them.
Right.
For the Wild, I think 244 skaters is what the number came out to be. So obviously we're not going to touch that. But I made a top 10. It was tough. It was tough. Honestly, there's some honorable mentions. I made some last second changes as we were setting up here. That's how hard it was. So I've got some honorable mentions. I'll touch on 3 guys who I think are good honorable mentions right now.
Okay.
The one guy that's kind of more chuckle worthy than anything, Martin Havlat. Only 2 seasons here, but was actually very productive.
What's wrong
2
with
seasons. You? What?
Nothing.
Oh, 2 seasons, 116 points in 151 games. So I mean that's towards the top of the scale as far as Wild skaters concerned. Obviously, his tenure here isn't very fondly remembered by anybody, especially Mikko Koivu.
Right.
But I just find it kind of interesting that Havlat had a pretty decent run here. Granted, it only lasted 2 years. Another one, Kevin Fiala, only played 83 games so far, but again on a points per game basis, he's up there. Like he's just a shade under Zach Parise right now as far as points per game with the Wild. His sample size is obviously pretty tiny, so I wasn't going to include him in the top 10. But I think it's interesting that he's kind of on that track right now, and obviously the surface of the sun that he was to end the season this year was obviously behind that. But it'll be interesting to see how much he can keep that up, and how much what kind of run he can really get, and what kind of damage he can do getting himself into this top 10 for future lists. My final honorable mention is a guy that I literally just bumped out of the top 10 7 minutes ago, and that is the T-shirt jersey I'm wearing today, Jason Pominville. Palmer had a good run here. I think it wasn't hard to bump out of the top 10 because, again, his tenure wasn't super fondly remembered because his contract was a little bit of an anchor towards the end there, and ultimately got him traded for Marcus Foligno essentially, and along with Scandella. So. But Palmer had a good run here as well. 206 points in 327 games, not bad. He's 13th in Wild history in points, so he's kind of right on that doorstep.
Interesting.
Yeah, Pominville. If you're gonna let the contract dictate your overall thoughts, I think that.
No, I'm not.
Okay. No, but I'm just saying. A lot of people obviously criticized him because of that expensive contract that he had, and clearly he never really played up to that. But you put him top line in the first year, and he went off with Granlund when Granlund was finally kind of starting to break out of whatever funk that he was when he first arrived, and he kind of slowly worked his way down to I think the third line, but. He was a serviceable player that I was surprised. Like when you see at the trade, or not the trade, but the draft when Pavel Datsyuk, the corpse of his contract was traded to Arizona, and it was like, really? Pominville is still at least a productive damn player, and you can't figure out a way to get rid of him. I know he's got an expensive contract, but otherwise Arizona's taking on dead money. I always thought that was the wildest thing ever.
Yeah, well, they took on. I mean, Ennis had a pretty decent sized contract at the time. It wasn't Pominville big, but it was obviously more than he was worth as well. So I think that was a part of that trade too. And they got Scandella, which the Wild were kind of guaranteed to deal defenseman that year. So but I'm with you. I thought he caught a bad rap here, especially towards the end. I think he was still a very good third line player, if not kind of bordering on a second line player. You look at the fancy stats, and he was still pretty tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my honorable mentions. If you want to get right into it, I can start with the top 10.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, number 10, Andrew Brunette. 489 games with the Wild, 119 goals, 202 assists, 321 points. It's almost easy to move him up simply for the Game 7 overtime goal. But, he had a good career. Being a top 10, he's obviously a good player. I just didn't have him, I didn't rocket him into the top 5 simply because of that goal. But he did. He had a very solid career, 6 seasons, obviously, in 2 different stints with the Wild, but a pretty solid overall career for Andrew Brunette with the Wild.
Yeah, that second tour of duty was it started off with the thinking of, man, why did we ever let this guy leave to begin with? Especially on the heels of the fact that he absolutely torched the Wild in the 2008 playoffs.
Yeah.
I think he had 3-4 goals in that series alone, and he had I think he had the dagger in Game 5 to win it for them. So it just felt like he never should have left, and had he not, he'd probably be higher up this list.
Oh, for sure.
He was a personal favorite of mine, just because he wasn't Marian Gaborik. You know what I mean? Everybody was loving the flash and dash of Marian Gaborik, and Andrew Brunette was the guy that couldn't skate very fast, he didn't have a whole lot of flash to his game. But what he did well is he worked around the net, and he made plays, he scored goals, and figured out ways to just to cash in on the rebounds, or even to make really good passes to Marian Gaborik. The 321 points puts him 6th overall in Wild franchise history. Like, I maybe not would have put him in the top 5, but maybe just on the outside of that, I think I would have gone with. But I also have a real strong liking to Andrew Brunette, I appreciate that he's in your top 10, but I might have bummed him up just a little bit more.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah,
so you'll see there's a couple of guys who weren't here for super long that I have ahead of them for reasons I'll explain. So number 10. So at number 9, I have PMB, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, who actually surprisingly had a 10-year career here. It's almost weird to think of his career as being long, just because it was very much cut short by concussions. Parts of 10 seasons with the Wild, 565 games is up there, obviously. 5th all-time in Wild points, 106 goals, 241 assists. So PMB in at number 9 for me.
PMB's patented move on zone entries was always coming into the zone, crossing the blue line, and then button hooking up the boards and looking to make a pass. And oftentimes that pass was going to Brian Ralston. The couple years that him and Brian Ralston had were phenomenal. I didn't want to swear there, but phenomenal. They were fantastic. Some of the you talk about like Granlund and Zucker, or Granlund and Stahl. Maybe even eventually what maybe Kevin Fiala could pair with a player here in the future, like Kaprizov maybe, You talk about the big pairs on this team. I think Andrew Brunette and Marian Gaborik were certainly one of them. And then you got PMB and Brian Ralston, and that was really, really good. So PMB, what could have been?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a shame that PMB gets remembered more for the spinorama in the shootout than like anything, because he had a really good body of work. Like he actually
that's definitely not how he should be remembered.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. So PMB is my number 9. Moving on to number 8 here, maybe a little bit controversial. Like I said, I wasn't super afraid of smaller sample sizes. Fiala obviously being a little too small, only 1 season, but number 8 for me, Eric Stahl, who has had just a phenomenal first 3 seasons here with the Wild, or at least 2.5. Really, really outperformed what was a very affordable contract at the time. But 311 games, 111 goals, 129 assists. He's already 11th in Wild history in points, having only played 3 seasons and change. Or parts of 4 seasons. So that just kind of goes to show that the clip that he was playing at, especially early on in his time here, and I kind of want to reward guys for that, for having that good run. And Eric Stahl is definitely that kind of guy.
Yeah, he is sixth all-time in goals with 111 already. Andrew Brunette right ahead of him. We already passed him on the list. Yeah, that's not a bad pick. Considering how short of a time he's been here, but he's had such a huge impact. It almost kind of reminds me of Brian Ralston in a way, and just how he kind of picked up the offense his first few years here.
Yeah, Eric Stahl was. I remember when he was signed, and it was like they're really going after Eric Stahl. Really, I mean, he's there's nothing really left. And then you saw the contract, and it was like, well, it's cheap enough. Okay. We'll see how it goes. All right, and then 2 years later, he's scoring 42 goals and tying the franchise record, and in a run that it was. I mean, it was exciting. It was fun following hockey that season when Eric Stahl was going for it, and he's you hear about just kind of way he handles himself. He's a consummate pro, does his job really well. Kind of faded, I think, in the last year and then maybe in parts of this season, but still, you could say that he could be in the top 10 just for tying the franchise record in goals.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just an incredible run. I mean, really, really a great run for him. So,
honest question: what besides Eric Stahl in that 17-18 season, what really do you remember about that year? As a good thing, we remember the black hole that was Kyle Quincy for 2 months.
Oh my God, yeah.
And some other odd stuff, but the good of that year, all I can think of is literally Eric Stahl, and it was just fun to watch him win games night after night.
Mm.
Yeah. Wasn't Jason Zucker having a pretty decent season? It was literally.
Oh, that was his. Wasn't that his 33 goal year?
Yeah.
I think that was it. Yeah, that was fun too.
Yeah, but it was really kind of the Wild were down to one line that season. This was after obviously the Jake Allen year, but
drink.
It was drink. It was really just that one line, and Jason Zucker was having a phenomenal year that year, but there really wasn't much else going on. Koivu was injured.
Mm-hmm.
No, he wasn't. This was last year I'm talking about.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a whole lot else was in depth-wise was pitching in like it was in the
that was the
16,
year that Prezi was hurt for the first half of the season, right?
Right.
Yeah, he actually had a great second half when he came back.
March and April he was a world beater.
Yeah.
No, Joe absolutely was right about that year. The Wild, after having tremendous depth the year before, they lost that depth from trades in the expansion draft, and the bottom six was just absolutely brutal.
Yeah, that was Kyle Quincy. Oh man, wow, was he terrible.
Name off the bottom six real quick, Giles.
Oh God. Well, I'm looking back at the team stats right now, so I'm just going to try and piece it together. We've got Marcus Foligno, we've got Daniel Winnick, Matt Cullen, Tyler Ennis, Yul Eriksson Ek, and Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart, I forgot about him.
That Matt Cullen experiment did not go well.
Not the second time around.
You know who didn't forget about Chris Stewart?
Magic.
Chuck Fletcher.
Yeah, well, cap strapped. That's how you end up with the bottom six like that. Ugh.
Yep, that's how you end up losing your job. That's the easy way. So we'll move on here to number 7. Number 7, Mikael Granlund. Unfortunately, in the news recently, had a child born without a heartbeat. Super sad story. So thoughts definitely go out to Mikael Granlund. It's easy to get how crazy the world is right now. It's easy to forget that actual tragedies still are happening all the time. And that was a very sobering reminder. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. So I think I just saw it on Twitter today or yesterday. I forget. But
I've kind of disconnected from sports.
Yeah,
recently.
No, and it's easy to, and stuff like that is again kind of a sobering reminder. So on to happier things. 461 games of the Wild, 93 goals, 224 assists, 317 points for Granlund over the course of 7 seasons with the Wild. Started slow, like you talked about. It took him a while to kind of really find himself, and I think Bruce Boudreau really unlocked Granlund, and we saw him turn into something really special here. Move to the wing as well was obviously huge for him. Kind of gave him a little bit more, space sometimes to create. I feel like, and that's definitely one of his strong suits. But certainly wasn't having a great season this season. Really kind of maybe it was just a case where he needed to build a lot of rapport with teammates to kind of get himself rolling, and that's what happened here, and obviously never happened in Nashville.
Yeah, well, Granlund did take a while. You're right about Boudreau kind of unlocking him a little bit. I would say it's probably Torchetti maybe a little bit the year before.
Yeah.
Kind of finally put him on the wing, and we kind of saw the beginnings of a Granlund resurgence. Man, he made some fantastic plays, didn't he?
His creativity was really great.
Yeah, it felt like even in his first couple seasons, like he wanted to play at like a whole different level than what the Wild were used to. Like he wanted to play way more east-west, and the Wild were so worried about getting it north, that the creativity was just sucked out of all the other players, and so he had to really get used to kind of that as well.